Hola, mucho gusto. Mi nombre es Gaby González y soy una de las voluntarias de AFI Joven. El día de hoy estoy con el doctor Callum Miller y vamos a platicar un poco de la opinión masculina sobre el aborto, un tema que la verdad es polémico y muchas personas, especialmente los hombres, creo yo que se guardan sus opiniones al respecto, pero hoy vamos a platicar un poco de por qué deberían de hacerlo. Hi, Dr. Miller, nice to meet you and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I hope we can have a great conversation and that we learn a lot and that you solve some of the personal doubts that I have.
I hope so.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get right on topic. Why should men talk about abortion?
I think there are loads of reasons why men should talk about abortion. Firstly, because it's a justice issue. Mm-hmm. It's an issue where there is an injustice and everyone should be concerned about injustice. You shouldn't just think that it occurs somewhere in a different place in the country and you can just ignore it. Martin Luther King Jr. actually said that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Mm-hmm. And so we cannot pretend it doesn't happen or it doesn't affect all of us. He said whatever affects one person directly affects everyone indirectly. So all of us have a role to play. I think a second reason is that many women want men to speak about abortion. They actually say men often have a platform that women don't have, especially in particular cultures. And, you know, I have many women who come to me and say, I'm so glad you're speaking about this because I don't feel like I'm in a position to, or I'm too afraid, and I feel like you are my voice. Mm-hmm. So for those women, telling me not to speak is basically taking away their advocate, which I think is disempowering to them. Mm-hmm. But I think one of the other main reasons, the last one I'll mention for now, mm-hmm. is that if you take men out of the conversation, it disempowers women in another way as well, because it basically says men don't have a place in looking after women and children. So what you see when abortion is legalized and when it is normalized is that men think it's a woman's issue, and therefore if a woman gets pregnant, a man just says, this is your issue, it's your body, your choice, mm-hmm. and therefore it's your burden as mm-hmm. well. And so the man can just walk away because it's not his issue, and this does not liberate women. There might be a few women who feel empowered by the fact that the man has abandoned them and they can decide all by themselves what to do, mm-hmm. but the reality is that pregnancy and raising a child were always supposed to be a burden for two people to carry together. And by saying that men aren't involved or shouldn't be involved, you're taking that entire burden and putting it on the shoulders of the woman alone. And I think that doesn't liberate women, it actually oppresses them more. So I think men have to be speaking about this.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And also the fact that in abortion, also baby boys are killed, and
right.
Also a pretty obvious reason, in order to have a baby, you need a man. So
exactly, yeah. I mean, I used to be a fetus. So
exactly.
even, if abortion could have affected me, especially as someone with a disability, I could have been aborted before birth, at any point before birth in my country. Mm-hmm. And so I have to speak about this. We all have a stake in it.
Yeah, definitely. And what do you think the pro-choice movement tries to silence men's opinion on this topic, besides the fake empowerment women may have?
I think it's sort of an own goal. It's sort of stupid to do that because men are actually more likely to be pro-choice.
Okay.
So if you say men shouldn't speak, you're actually cutting out more pro-choice people. Mm-hmm. All the surveys show that women are more pro-life, or at least there's no difference. Mm-hmm. And so if they applied it consistently, they would be getting rid of way more pro-choice people, and it would actually be bad for them. But of course, they don't genuinely think this, because whenever a pro-choice man speaks up, it's absolutely fine. Mm-hmm. I've never seen a pro-choice man be told to be quiet. And ultimately, this is not about this being a woman's issue. It's about an easy sort of shortcut mm-hmm. to get rid of a load of pro-choice men, so that you cut half of the to get rid of pro-life men, mm-hmm. so that you cut half of the pro-lifers out of the conversation. Mm-hmm. And so really, I think for most people, it's just a trick. There's nothing to it. I do think there is truth in the idea that men often speak too quickly and without listening and without mm-hmm. enough humility, because I do occasionally hear men say dumb things and act as if pregnancy is an easy thing or something like that. And so I think it's true that men have to pay attention to women, and when they speak, they should speak humbly and they should speak after listening. But I think to say that they shouldn't speak at all is just crazy.
Yeah, definitely. And also, like, it's complicated and also kind of hypocrite that they defend freedom and empowerment, but they defend it only in the way that it benefits them.
Right,
because
exactly.
if it's against them, no, it should be like quiet and everything.
Right.
And like, isn't it ironic that men shouldn't have an opinion on abortion, but trans people can? Like, for example, I don't know if you watch Friends, but there's an episode in which Rachel says, "No uterus, no opinion," and everyone's like, "Oh my God, Rachel!" So, what do you think about that?
Well, that's another big issue, which I won't go into detail on, but it kind of illuminates the shallowness of what they're saying. That they really genuinely struggle to answer the question, can a trans woman speak about abortion, in many cases? And in fact, we see the abortion sort of industry divided on this question. I actually have a good friend who ran the largest abortion provider in my country, and she thinks it's absolutely crazy that people can be genuinely considering this idea of giving biological men who identify as women abortions. There was a video, I can't remember who it was, but they went into a Planned Parenthood in the US, and it was an obvious man, biological man. He wasn't even posing as a woman.
Okay.
He just said, "I'm pregnant and I need an abortion." And the person was like, "Okay, sure," and checked that he, whether he had a uterus. He was like, "No, I don't have a uterus, but I need an abortion." And they were going to do it. They were like, "Okay, we'll book you in." It's just crazy. So I think.
And they actually did something?
No, I think I don't know what happened afterwards.
I think I will have to look for that video.
But it shows that this is a movement to a large degree not grounded in reality. It's a movement grounded in ideology. And of course, to be pro-choice, you have to either deny the science or you have to say that human beings don't always matter. Because the scientific reality is that life begins at fertilization. That's not in the Bible, even. The Bible doesn't mention fertilization. It's not a philosophical view. It's not a personal opinion. It's what I learnt at Oxford Medical School as a medical fact. And so really to deny that is just to deny basic science.
Yeah, totally. And like for both men and women, what must we know or take into account when talking about this topic?
I think there's a huge amount. So I have at least 15 lectures on this topic. So
or your top 5.
Okay.
Your key points.
So firstly, I think the first thing I would say is yes, this is not a religious debate. This is a debate about science, and science is absolutely clear that life begins at fertilization. The second thing that I think is often not widely known is what happens if a woman is denied an abortion. So we often hear, if you deny women an abortion, she will feel tortured, she will suffer, she will regret having this child, she will abuse that child maybe. And the reality is that we have evidence on this question. They have done a study that was actually done by pro-abortion researchers in the last 10 years, and they studied women that were denied an abortion. And what they found is that when a woman was denied an abortion, in America, where the woman could have gone to another state or could have gone to another clinic, over 70% of those women had the baby, which shows that pro-life laws do work. They do reduce abortion rates. They save the large majority of lives. So they save thousands and millions of lives across the world every year. Now, what happens when those women have the baby? Well, it turned out that they asked the woman 5 years later, "Are you glad you were denied an abortion?" And of those women who kept the baby and raised the baby, 98% of them said they were glad they were denied an abortion.
Definitely. I think I will watch this interview again and write it down, everything, so that I don't forget anything.
It's all on my website, so you can find it all there.
Great, thank you. Then how could we motivate men to express their voice and talk about abortion?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think because it's the courageous and right thing to do. I think firstly, there are so many men who lose a child through abortion, and I can only imagine what it feels like to lose a child. It must be one of the most painful things in the world that so many people do go through either through a born child or through miscarriage. It's unspeakably, difficult and painful. But the reality is that many men lose a child through abortion. Across the world, 50 million men lose a child through abortion every year. Again, I think men have to speak about abortion and should be motivated because it's what men are there for. They're there to be strong people that protect less strong people. Now, that's not always the case. There are many women that are stronger than me. I'm not going to deny that. But ultimately, men need people to look up to. And men, in order to avoid toxic masculinity or abusing people or, all the terrible ways of expressing manliness, men do need role models. They need to be protectors, and they need to be there using whatever platform or privilege they have to protect those people without that platform or privilege. In many parts of the world, it is women who lack that privilege and platform, and it is women who are marginalized that need men to speak up for them. In other parts of the world, it's the unborn child that needs men to speak out for them. So I think a really good illustration of this is Emma Watson, the actor who acted Hermione in Harry Potter. She created this entire campaign a few years ago called He for She. And the whole point of it was that in order for justice in the world, men have to be, specifically justice for women, men have to be involved in that fight using their platform to advocate for women. And I think she's absolutely right that men have to do that. We all have to be involved in advocating. And that is the same in the case of abortion. Men have to speak out. And often, to be honest, men are just being cowards by not doing it. So I would say, if what is stopping you speaking out is cowardice,
thank you so much. And due to the progress and normalization that abortion is having in our society, what should be the key point that men should discuss? Taking into account that you are telling us about the justice and the social engagement we have, what should be that key point?
I think maybe even the first thing before, well, maybe at the same time, men have to speak out about abortion. They have to say, this is a child, this is a human being that needs to be protected. There is also a mother that needs special care and protection during pregnancy. They need to speak out against the men that refuse to take that responsibility. So there are so many men out there who are leaving women in these situations alone, and that is such a big part of the reason that abortions happen. We know that a huge proportion of abortions happen because either the man has abandoned the woman or because the man is not the right partner for the woman, or something to do with the man. And ultimately, in many cases, this is the failing of the man. They should be the right partner. They should be a good father. They should be there for the women. They should not pressure the women into having an abortion. So men have to make sure that other men are stepping up to their responsibilities and to encourage and normalize a culture where men do that. It should be normal for a man to reserve sex until he's ready to have a child and to be proud of that. And it should be normal for a man, if he does get a woman pregnant, inside or outside of marriage, to step up and be a man, because that is what the brave, good thing to do is. And then, of course, if you are a man in that situation, you have to speak up both for your child and for the person you've got pregnant. And that really is so crucial, because for so many women having an abortion, there is no one telling them they can do this. Not a single person saying you can do it. And often the only person there who is going to say that, or who could say that, is the man. So men have a profoundly important role in saying, you can do this, but I will help you to do this. I will be there as well. I think it's completely crucial, especially when you take into account the fact that a quarter of abortions, in some countries a higher percentage, but in many countries, a quarter of abortions are coerced by men. And so they have to be the ones doing the opposite, saying you can do this and I will be there as well.
This issue, I think it gets more complicated in Guatemala because we're third world country and all of that. But I heard that you were visiting us in the Congress. So can you share with us a little bit of that and what you talk about?
Yeah, so I was with a colleague, Dr. Trandam, and we both spoke about, well, between us we spoke about sex trafficking and that issue in Guatemala, as well as the international pressure on Guatemala to promote abortion, to legalize abortion, to make it normal. So yeah, I really shared a few different ways in which the international community pressures through Western governments like the US and the UK, my own country, the United Nations, the World Health Organization. All of these organizations, especially the global ones, are supposed to represent international opinion. They're supposed to partly represent Guatemala, being pro-life, or at least, you know, the difference of opinions. But actually, they're full of just kind of hand-picked activists and bureaucrats that all support abortion for the most part.
Yeah.
And they spend so much money and energy, often blackmailing people in Guatemala, you know, bribing politicians and so on, to promote abortion. And sometimes they'll do it very overtly, and they'll just tell a country, you have to do this. Other times they'll do it much more subtly through the education system. So they will put really radical stuff into the education system. As an example, I was reading a booklet from the World Health Organization the other day, which was about the standards for sex education in Europe. What should a child of any particular age be learning at their age? And it was saying that 9 to 12-year-olds shouldn't just be given information, they should be given the skills to learn how to give consent or refuse consent to sex, how to make a decision to be sexually active for 9-year-olds. It's super crazy. And the same education, which is supposed to prevent risky sexual behavior and is supposed to prevent abortion, in fact promotes children having sex. It promotes them having abortions when they inevitably get pregnant because they're too young to know how to use contraception well. This stuff is already in Guatemala. And so I was sharing about that, and I was sharing some ideas on how they can respond to that and keep Guatemala pro-life.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Thank you so much. And yeah, the pro-life movement, it's important, even though if it's like at a community level or even with a group of friends, but like from step by step, you can achieve something spectacular and you can end up affected internationally. So yeah, the pro-life movement has to be improved and it has to gain more power, because even though it's a pretty great movement, I think it doesn't have enough power or a great voice. So what you're doing, it's a great example on how can we improve the pro-life movement. And like this movement is full of men and women of all ages, and we can now notice even more the involvement of teenagers or young people. So do you have a message for them?
Yeah, I guess I would say a few things. So one is learn what it is to be pro-life and why you're pro-life. Like you were telling me just before we started filming about, you know, it was just seen as a bad thing and seen as a sin, but it's easy to think that without fully understanding what it is. So I would say learn what abortion is.
Okay.
If you feel you're able to do it, watch a video of one or read a description of one, find out what it actually does to the child, learn about what it does to the woman, and then think, how can I use my skills to fight for life? So I always say to everyone, you don't have to be a good public speaker, you don't have to be a doctor, you don't have to be a lawyer. Everyone has skills that they can use to be part of this movement. Everyone can volunteer with their pro-life movement. And you have such a good movement in Guatemala that if you got in touch with the groups here, like AFI or any of the other groups, they will find something for you to do. There is always something that people can be doing. And it's, like you say, it's a great movement to be a part of. It's fun, but it's also right. We're doing the right thing. And that, you know, the satisfaction when you know that what you have done has saved a life, even just one life, that is more than most people do in their lifetimes. Even just saving one life from abortion is so easy to do, and you will do it. And that just gives you an incredible sense of satisfaction, not for your own gain, but because it's the right thing to do. So yeah, I would say get involved, learn how to get involved, and find the people who will help you to do that.
Definitely. And I would also advise not to be afraid, because it happens, well, in my case in the university, that I speak and I fight with everyone, etc., etc. But there are a lot of people that are pro-life or have something in common with the way that I think, but they are scared and they don't speak loud, or they just remain quiet, and that's a problem. And that's a problem that the pro-life movement may have. So yeah, and also the known as cancel culture that we're suffering right now, that also it's a huge threat for the pro-life movement.
Yeah.
And how can we motivate people to listen and check out the great labor done by the pro-life movement?
Well, firstly, I would say there's nothing to be afraid of, really, especially in Guatemala. I mean, yes, in some particularly bad countries, you know, I could lose my job, or, you know, people could, and people do, you know, attack me on Twitter and things. But ultimately, like, it's fine. Like, I'm saving lives. Like, what could be more valuable than that to do with your life? Like, what could you possibly want more in your life than to be someone that follows what is right and tries to do that, and ultimately, however long it takes in the future, will be recognized for that. Like, there's nothing more powerful and empowering and joyful than doing this work. So I come from a country where 5% of people are pro-life. 5%. I'm a doctor and I'm an academic at a top university, and if I say one wrong thing, I could lose my job or my license or whatever. And you know, like I say, most people disagree with me, many people hate me, some people really try to attack me and do all sorts of horrible things. But I love this work, and like, I wouldn't do anything else instead. So if I feel this way in England, in Guatemala, most people agree with you. Your government agrees with you. Most people on the street agree with you. Like, you don't have to be afraid. Yes, there will be loud people that disagree, but
it's part of the process.
And they support killing babies. Like, why does their opinion matter that much when they support this? Like, it's kind of crazy. So I get for some people, especially if you don't know these arguments in detail, it can be scary and that kind of thing, but learn them, learn why you believe what you believe, find other people that believe what you believe, join Afijoven, which has a ton of young people. You know, pro-lifers aren't just the older, uncool people that you might not want to associate with. There are tons of young pro-life people as well.
Yeah.
They can give you support, and there are thousands of them. So get that support, find those friends, learn why you believe this, and then there's really nothing to be ashamed of. Like, we go marching through London in our March for Life, knowing that we're 5%, and none of us are ashamed. We're proud, and we love it, and we have a great time. So I think you can do the same in Guatemala even more.
Definitely. Thank you so much. I think this was a pretty motivating and fulfilling talk. So, yeah, so Dr. Miller, thank you so much for your time. It was great having you here, and we hope we can have you soon back with us.
Thank you. I'd love to come back.
Bueno, esta fue toda la entrevista. Les agradezco mucho que la hayan visto. Espero que la hayan disfrutado tanto como yo disfruté haciéndola. Y pues ya saben, si quieren, únanse a Afijoven. Aquí los vamos a recibir con los brazos abiertos. Vamos a encontrar una forma en la que ustedes puedan colaborar con esta causa. Y pues nuevamente muchísimas gracias, y espero que les hayamos dejado una pequeña espinita sobre por qué los hombres sí pueden hablar del aborto. Gracias.